Hey guys, so welcome to my desktop. This is going to be the beginning of our tutorial. First, I do want to make a couple of assumptions, just mainly so that we're all on the same page. And more importantly, I can set your expectations. So first assumption is I'm going to assume that you are new to Figma. And what I mean by that is whether you have a few projects under your belt or you have 0 projects under your belt, that's okay. This tutorial is exactly for you because I'm going to walk you guys through everything step by step. And the second assumption that I'm going to make is that you've already created your Figma account. So with that, it is free, guys. You can just literally go to figma.com and download Figma and start up an account right away. And it's completely free. With that free account, you get one project that you can work on actively. Once you decide that Figma is a thing for you and you want to keep going on, you can then look into a subscription, and they have different tiers there as well. And what that does is it unlocks unlimited projects and a whole slew of other options as well. So with that, let's start going through the UI. So then I'll walk you through the different parts of Figma and get you familiarized with all the tools. So once I get you guys familiar with all the tools, then we'll go straight into a step-by-step comprehensive tutorial on how to create wireframes. So let's get to it. If you look at my screen, top left-hand corner, you're going to see 2 icons. You're going to see an icon of a house and the plus icon. So disregard what you're seeing right here on my main screen. This is usually empty, especially when you first start your account. There's not going to be any projects on your end. Right now, all you're just seeing is just all the projects that I've worked on throughout the years, both agency and client side. So all your project folders and all your individual project names. And then as for the all projects tab, it's going to be listed within the main body of this panel. You're going to go to the top left-hand corner and you're going to click on the plus button. What that'll do is it'll create a new project. You can also do that in top right-hand corner. You'll see a project button there. And here's the thing. When I show you something in Figma, just like with any sort of software, whether you're using Figma, whether you're using Adobe Creative Suite, there tends to be different ways to get from point A to point B to point C, all the way down to Z. So what I'm going to show you throughout this tutorial is what's worked for me and how I would approach it. I'm going to try my best to show you not a how-to kind of video, because I find that when you frame it as a how-to, it restricts people's mind to exploring other ways of accomplishing like a certain way of using the software. And I don't want that rigidity for you guys. I want to be able to show you what I've done and learned over the years that's helped to make me efficient. So that's why I'm approaching my tutorials not as a how-to, but how I have approached things. Again, you can take that and use that as your foundation as you continue to refine your technique and understanding of Figma. All right, so once you click on the plus symbol, what's going to take you to a new page where you're going to see new design, new Figma Jamboard, and a new slide deck. Underneath, you're going to see recent files. You're not going to have to worry about that, especially if you're just new to Figma. So what you're going to do is now click on new design file. Okay, guys, so now that you've clicked on new design file, let's name our actual file. So at the top left-hand corner, you're going to see a drop-down and you're going to see the name of your actual file. Go ahead and you can click on that. You could either click on rename or you could just click on it in general. So let's call this YouTube wireframe tutorial. Looking at our canvas now, this is your main canvas, your middle area. To the left side, this left pane, this is where all your files and assets are. So every time we make a new layer, all your different layers are going to be showing up on the left-hand side. Also, if you look, there's File and Assets tab. Later on, I'm going to be showing you guys advanced techniques in Figma specifically components and auto layers. So this assets panel will become a lot more important as I start showing you guys more advanced techniques, so specifically with auto layers and components. But for now, we're going to just focus on the File tab. On the right-hand side, you're going to see the Properties panel. This panel is going to show everything that has to do with the object that you are currently working on. If you create some sort of shape, it's going to show all the properties for that specific shape. For fonts, any colors, changes that you're going to do, it's all going to be shown on the right-hand side. You're also going to be able to export and do a few other things as well too. On the bottom, this is your toolkit. This is where all your tools are. You're going to have your pointer tool, your frame creator, your shape creator, your pen tool, your text tool, and making any comments. There's also actions and there's also dev mode. But for now, we're just going to focus on these first few items. Something I want to stress is I'm only going to show you what you honestly really need to know. Like I mentioned before, there's tons of ways to do things in Figma to do the same thing. But for like 80 to 90% of the work, I'm going to show you everything you really just need to know. The most efficient way for me when it comes to building out wireframes and even high fidelity mockups as well too. All right, guys. So before we start anything, I want to do a little bit of house cleaning first and some proper setups. There is an important setting that I need you guys to adjust. So if you go to the top left-hand corner under Figma, you're going to go under settings, and then under settings, you're going to see nudge amount. Select that. You're going to see a panel that says nudge amount. By default, small nudge is going to be at 1 and big nudge is going to be set to 10. So I want you to change big nudge to 8. There's a very important reason for that, and that tends to go hand in hand when I explain how grids work. So let's close this up. All right, so the next step is if you go to your tools panel, you're going to see frame. You can press F and that'll highlight frame. Once you select frame, go to the far right side pane. Now you're going to see that there's options under the design panel. So there'll be phone, tablet, desktop, then a slew of other things, etc., etc. So we're just going to focus obviously on desktop. And you're going to see MacBook Air, MacBook Pro 14, MacBook Pro 16, desktop, wireframe TV. We're going to focus on just desktop. And you're going to see that it's 1440 by 1024. So go ahead and select it. It's going to create the desktop and it's going to have the exact measurements as what it showed on the panel. So before we start designing anything, if you click off anywhere, if you want to change the page color, this will help with different contrasts. So you can go all the way to white, you can dim it down to gray, you can even go red if you wanted to, or any other sort of colors on the spectrum. But I tend to do like more of a 80% gray, and that helps with contrasting without it being too blackened in the background. Now that you've put that frame on the main canvas, you're going to see on your left-hand side, under layers, it's represented. From here, you can turn it off and on with the eye, or you can lock it down as well too. When it comes to UI UX, we tend to design with grids. Now, I'm going to explain to you the importance of grids and how to set it up properly. By selecting your frame, now you're going to go to the right-hand panel, and now if you look down, second item at the bottom, you're going to see Layout Grid. Go ahead and press the plus. It adds a layer, and you notice it's just this big grid. We're going to adjust that so it's a lot more easier to use. Select the drop-down. You're going to see columns and rows. Select columns. Now it's going to show 5 columns on there. To the left of the drop-down, you're going to see Layout Grid Settings. Go ahead and click on it. And now we're going to change that count from 5 to 12. We're setting it up as a 12-column grid. That's a standardization when it comes to UI UX design, especially when it comes to web. Then margins, we're going to keep that at 0 for now, and we're going to change gutter to 30. So if you remember, this frame is 1440. You're going to see it here, the top right-hand corner, the dimensions 1440 by 1024. That is the dimensions of this specific frame. So what you're going to do now is on the left-hand side, you're going to see the rulers. If you just click on it, you're going to be able to drag out a red guide. Go ahead and grab it, grab a second one, place it on the right side this time. So now you have a left and a right side guide. Now that we have the guide there, we know distance from left to right is 1440. We're going to go back into the properties of that grid, and now we're going to change it. So this is 120 margins. So we've added 120 on the right and 120 on the left. Now you select the frame. We're going to select the width under dimensions, and we're going to put in 1680 as the width. So let's adjust this, make sure it's right up to the edge on the far side and right up to the edge on the left side. Now you have your guides in there. So you're probably asking yourself, why did I do this? Originally, our canvas was 1440p. So what I did was I added 120 pixels on the right side and on the left side. If you add it all together, it's 1680. But I've left 120 margin on the left and 120 margin on the right. And in between, that's 1440. So the importance of why we've done this is to help us communicate to our developers when certain items within the layout are going to become responsive. Whenever design elements are inside the actual 12-column grid, that stays fixed. So it never expands or moves or anything like that. But any items or any design elements that go beyond 12-column grid, I'm telling my developers to then change it to not fixed, but variable. So it's going to respond and it's going to expand out. I'll show you when we actually go to start wireframing things out. It'll be a lot more clear. So now we're going to add in the rows on the grid. Select your desktop frame. To the right-hand side, we're going to add now under layout grid, we're going to hit the plus button. It's going to add another grid line in there. We're going to change it now to rows, from grid to rows. Go ahead and select the settings, change this to 2000. So that's going to add 2000 rows, basically, of horizontal lines. We're going to change type to top. So it's going to orientate everything from the very top. And then we're going to keep offset to 0 and change gutter to 0. And there you go. All right. So now you're looking at your grid and you have a really nice looking grid now to do your designs. So you're doing a 12-column grid with horizontal grid. Each one of those rows are a pixel of 8 in terms of height. So now that we have our vertical rows and we have our horizontal rows, I'm going to go back to when I had you change your nudging to multiples of 8. So this is why it's important that we changed everything to multiples of 8. Using 8 pixel multiples is honestly really crucial for creating a consistent and visual appealing layout. What it does is it ensures all the elements are sized and spaced in increments of 8. That's why I've shown you guys how to set up your grids, because that foundation is so critical for when you start doing your wireframes and eventually your high fidelity mockups as well too. By adhering to the whole 8 pixel grid, all elements in your designs will always have a harmonious relationship with each other. So it's going to create this really clean and professional look. So when it comes to scalability, since most of the screen sizes are divisible by 8, designs built on the system can easily adapt to different devices without losing any visual integrity. So when it comes to improved collaboration, when everyone on the design team uses the same 8 pixel grid system, it simplifies the communication and ensures everyone is on the same page. This is something that I'm always communicating to my developers, that they know wherever I put any sort of design element on the page, whether it's horizontal or vertical, one of those measurements are always going to be a multiple by 8. Again, there's other grid systems that are out there that are a lot more simplified. Oftentimes, people will just use vertical 12-column grids, and they don't even use the horizontal 8 pixel grids. But the way I've approached it, this has helped me communicate this to my developers, and we've always come out with really clean, precise designs. Okay, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit to when we first initially set up the canvas to 1440p. And I want to help you get an understanding of why we chose 1440p. it's right in that sweet spot where you can upscale to 2 or 4K, but you can downscale to 1080 or even 720. It's in that really nice sweet spot right now where a lot of people are getting monitors where it's starting to become standardized at 1440. Many designers and developers are increasingly adopting that 40p as a standard for creating high quality digital content. And pretty much every company I've worked with in the past year or two has been designing for 1440 when it comes to web design. Okay guys, so now that we've got a lot of that foundational stuff out of the way and you're all set, so now you've understands now how to do a proper grid setup, both with columns and also with rows. And you have a better understanding now as to why we approach things with an 8-pixel multiple. And also now you have a full understanding as to why we're targeting 1440 screens as well too. All right, so you're all probably wondering now, what are we going to wireframe? After all this, what are we going to wireframe? Okay, so I'm going to show you a great site I feel is going to be a really great starter site to work on and to use as inspiration for our first wireframe. So let me just put this up on screen, and right there it is, the Tesla website. So you're probably asking yourself, why are we going to use the Tesla website? There's a number of things. One, it's a beautiful site. If you guys haven't had a chance, and I'm pretty sure you guys have had a chance to explore, it's a beautiful site. It's like a really great example of nice, clean user experience. And it gets you straight through the funnel as well, which is fantastic. I like how it has a really great hero shot of the product and very clear and concise navigation to get you from S1 down that funnel. It's about creating that frictionless user experience to get that user through the funnel to buy. So this site is really great because we can break things down pretty easily. Let's select the screenshot, go to the right side, click on fill, and then you're going to see image. We're going to now take the image and let's change the saturation all the way to the left. What we're doing is when it comes to wireframes, like I mentioned before, we want to focus on placement. And what I'm doing is I'm pulling out all the colors so that we're switching that knob in our brain to think like wireframers versus high fidelity mockups, right? There's no better way to start learning wireframes by taking existing content that's publicly out there and using that as inspiration to building our technique and practicing. So the reason why I want to do that is because the more you practice and the more you get used to using your tools, you're no longer fighting your tools. And when you no longer fight your tools and you're no longer trying to figure that part out about the software, then you naturally start focusing on the creativity side of things. Because what I find happens to younger designers, especially when they're trying to learn new software, is they limit their designs and their creativity to what they know how to do in the software. So if I can teach you guys how to become more efficient and use your tools efficiently in Figma, then naturally you'll start being more and more creative. You'll no longer limit your creativity based off of the tools that you know how to use. That's my goal for you. And the only way to do that is through practice. And the more designs you do, the more wireframes you do, the easier it's going to get to understanding your tools in Figma. We're just going to focus on the main landing page, and eventually we'll be breaking down other parts of the site as well too, and wireframing that. So for now, let's just focus on this landing page. So the best way to break down a landing page, and this goes for whether it's Tesla's or any other landing page that you're designing for, is you want to break things down into simple shapes. So on the top area, you have a little callout section, usually reserved for any specific callouts that are new to the site, new offerings, any promotions, and then they have a CTA that lets the user click and view the inventory. Below that, you have the logo to the top left, and in the middle, you have navigation, And then to the right, you have the 3 icons that are essentially secondary sub-navigations. Right? And then below that, you have your H1. And what I mean by H1, I'm referring to header 1. And down the road, you'll have H2, H3, and that's considered your header 2, header 3, and so forth. Below the H1, you now have 2 main CTAs. To the left, you have Order Now, and to the right, you have Demo Drive. And lastly, you have this beautiful hero shot of the Model Y. Since we're wireframing, we're trying to break down all the ingredients that we're working with. All right, guys, since this is a practice session, let's duplicate it. So go ahead and click the desktop frame. And there's a trick to copying things quickly. You can do a copy and paste, which is your Control-C, Control-V, or you can hover over an object. And when you have it selected, if you press on Option, you'll notice that your pointer icon turns into a double cursor. So what that's indicating is now you can grab it, and if you hold Shift, you can make sure that things are lined up straight. Nothing goes off. But if you stop pressing Shift, you can easily just move things around. And then if you hold Shift again, it will keep things aligned. And that's a beautiful part about Figma is there's a snapping feature on there that is by default on. So that really helps as well too with making sure everything is all aligned with your design. All right, guys. So let's delete our copy. Let's move it to the side. All right. And make sure that everything's all pixel perfect. Let's move this 50 pixels together. Let's make it 100 just to give us nice padding. So this is what we're going to replicate. Okay. Let's break things down again. All right. We got the top here, right? So we're going to recreate that first. Let's bring up our grid. So Control G. Let's now click on our rectangle shape. So first, go ahead and draw your shape just to get things started. And this is the importance of your row grid. So if you notice, everything snaps. So now you see the importance of why I do that, because everything is always pixel perfect. In this case, it's 1680 by 48. And that's a pretty good representation. And that is our first shape that we're going to do. Turn off all your different guides, turn it back on with Command /, bring back your UI, and Control G to bring back your grid. If you select the object, you can see all the different properties of this object, right down from the dimensions, opacity being 100, 0 radius corners, and you have your fill. You can add a stroke in there, and pretty much everything that you need to know about that object is right there. So now the next part that builds this promo piece is the wording. Let's just do by default. Okay, so because this is a wireframe and this is all high level stuff, there's no need for design. That's why we've turned everything black and white. We want to simplify it and focus on basic shapes and what makes up the actual structure of the page. So we're going to hit T, we're going to click anywhere on the screen, and now we're going to just type in inventory model Y available now, explore reduced pricing. Let's keep everything as Arial. So when it comes to wireframing, you don't need to necessarily use brand fonts. That's more reserved for when you start getting into high fidelity mockups. So because we're wireframing everything is at its basic form, let's just keep everything at default. So you can keep it at Arial if you'd like. Sometimes I like to change things into Helvetica because it has a lot more weights to it. So how about this? Let's switch it to Helvetica. If you need to keep it to Arial, that's fine. But in this case, for this tutorial, we're going to switch the font to Helvetica. Let's change it to regular. Okay, we've got the copy in now. So if you also look here, there's a bolding, so we can create that same effect. Now that we have Helvetica and we're able to create that hierarchy, let's actually bring that up to a bold. And now you have something very similar. So let's make sure everything is all lined up perfectly. This all goes down to your grid system, right? Everything's all pixel perfect. Let's zoom right in. And if you notice here, everything's all nice and perfect, 16 pixels. Another trick is if you want to show your floating guides, especially for measuring distances, what you do is you select an object and then you hold Option. And what that does is it brings up the double cursor, but all you have to do now is just hover over another object and display the distances. So in this case, it's showing 16 by 16. Now let's make the view inventory button. The thing is, what a lot of young designers do, or a lot of people that are new to Figma, they tend to make buttons by clicking on the shape tool, draw an actual object with a shape, and then they come in here and then they type in the text and they say view inventory. And that tends to be how people approach creating buttons. Would you agree? I'm going to show you guys something different. And this gets a little more advanced, but if you guys can wrap your head around right away, it's going to make your life so much easier. So I'm going to show you guys auto layers, and auto layers is going to be your best friend. So I'm going to show you guys how to build objects and build components using auto layers and buttons especially. And I'm going to show you the benefits as to why we approach it this way. So now we're going to do a dynamic button. No longer are we going to be doing buttons the old conventional way. We're going to do things more dynamically. And the earlier you understand and wrap your head around how an auto layer works, the better off you will be as well too as you work in Figma, because it's such a powerful thing. It does so much, even beyond what I'm just going to show you with this button. You're going to hit T. We're going to now press on your screen and type in view inventory. So now we've typed in view inventory. Let's change this to 14 just to make it so that it's closer to our copy that's beside it. Double click, and now it's everything all hugs perfectly. So now you're going to right click and you're going to select auto layer. You can also hold down shift and press A or select it in the drop down. So this time we're going to do shift A and it's going to create an auto layer for us. So we're going to change the fill to be black. So let's do fill, eyedropper, let's select the background color, and now the font itself, we are going to change that to white. Perfect. All right. So this is the cool part. If you look to the right-hand side of your properties panel, you now have a section called auto layer. It's going to give you all the attributes that are specific to this object. So you have your padding, you have your alignment, you have your actual width and height, and now it's all set to hugging. And you're going to see if you hover over each one, it's going to show you which areas it represents. I tend to not really play around with all this except for really just alignment and padding, especially if I'm making a button. Also, there's another one here, which is corner radius, which I'm going to show you here in a second. But this is the cool part. Now that you have this auto layer, this whole thing is dynamic. As you change the padding, that's your distance between here. It's 40 by 40. It makes it absolutely perfect. And now you're controlling the actual object itself and all these different properties. You're not having to manually create the button. You no longer have to do that. You're basically just using settings, and even like your height as well. That's how you create a dynamic auto layers button. It has all the different attributes. You could change the opacity, and you can change the fill. You can even add a stroke in there if you wanted to. But in this case, we have a rounded corner. So let's round the corner as well too. So in this case, you can change the radius so that it has rounded corners. You can also go all the way up and change it into a pill, which is like 40-ish or so. But you can also go back down and just add in, like I tend to add in like 5 or something like that. But again, this is just a wireframe. This is all high level. A lot of the refinement will happen anyways in your high fidelity mockups when you start adding in the branding. But right now we're just figuring out placement. So in this case, let's just change it to 4. I think that looks pretty good. 3 is good. And if you notice, everything's all pixel perfect in terms of height. There we go. Let's increase the actual height as well too. So now the height of the backing is now 64. And let's also do the exact same thing with the copy. And because we did that, everything's all nice and centered. Okay, here's what I also mean about making sure things are multiples of 8. So you want to keep things as close to multiples of 8, at least one of the measurements. If you can do both of them, that's great. So in this case, it's 16 by 16, but you have 20, you can change this to 24. So just single nudge until you get it to 24, and it's a nice even amount. It's all a nice, perfect multiple of 8. So what you can do is now select both objects. We now do, again, an auto layer. So now this is an auto layer as well. So this is what I mean. This is the powerful part about auto layers. Now that we've created this auto layer with the text and also with a button, you now have option to reorder things. So let's say you want to move this button to the left. You literally just move it and it just snaps. Again, move it and it just snaps. It remembers. You can even get even more fancier and copy and then paste it. And it adds a brand new button to the right of it. You do the exact same thing with a copy. And you notice the spacing in between it is 24. So you can actually reduce that down to multiples of 8, 16. And you're controlling everything all dynamically. That's the really cool part about all this. So let's delete this. Delete the one text, delete the other text. Let's center this out. So now it's centering out to the middle. Now we want to get even more fancier, and we can now change the padding. This is the padding to the left and right. We can even all the way. We can get right to the edge of the pixel. There you go. And do the same thing for the height. There we go, 16. So now that whole thing is an object. That's that width. And that's all controlled by your padding. And that's really important because later on, when we go to make this responsive, this is all going to be factored in. Okay. So what's next? So let's do the navigation. So navigation wise, since we've already built all this, let's just copy and paste it. We can pull it out. And so what we did was just do the copy and paste. We pulled it out of the object. And now let's do the main navigation. Vehicles. Then we have vehicles. Let's double click and it tightens things up. Let's keep it to black. And then now we're going to auto layers this about the same size. So we're going to auto layer. Perfect. Now that's an auto layer here. And there's our first button for our navigation. Okay. This is an auto layer. So let's go ahead and duplicate it. Again, you can hold down Option and then Shift and everything stays nice and tight. Now select both objects, right click or hit Shift A. And now that is an auto layer. We can now change the distance. So this here is for the gap. This is for the padding on the outside. This is for the padding on the top and the bottom. And this is the padding for the gap in between the objects. We can even change it up even further. We can do 16. So to make things easier now, we just do copy and paste. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 objects, 1, 4, 5, and we just change the actual names to what they need to be. Energy, charging, cover, and shop. And see how nice everything's all pixel perfect and multiples of 8. Now we're going to change the alignment so it's centered. Want to keep everything perfect in terms of distance. Now we're going to measure from here to here. This is 40. Again, everything's all multiples of 8. Again, those were all the settings that we did at the very beginning. That's going to make our life extremely easy now. Everything's always going to stay nice and even all throughout our layouts. And this is going to make life easier for our developers and pretty much everyone that's going to be touching your files. Okay. So we're going to center things out and then that's it. So let's continue building things out. All right. So next we have, and again, the cool part about this is because everything's a smart auto layer, we can move things around. Look at that. Easily move and reorder stuff if we wanted to. Like the gap in between is always 16. It's beautifully even. And then everything from here is always adjusting itself perfectly. So there's no guesswork. Honestly, there's no guesswork anymore. If you approach Figma the way I'm showing you right now, you're making sure you are absolutely accurate on your end, and your developers are going to absolutely love you. So the next part is the Tesla logo. Let's do Tesla, right? We're going to make this as close as possible. So it's a bold and make this nice and big. Then from here, I have letter spacing. You can increase the letter spacing in between, and that's it. And we're going to line this up so it's the center. And then we're going to put right up to the edge for now. You have to make sure that the object itself is perfectly aligned horizontally and vertically. Get right down to the edge. And distance-wise, you're looking at 24. All right. So that's the logo for now. It's coming along really nice. Let's do the background because I do want to change the font colors and get everything all set. So when it comes to the background, let's create a rectangle. So rectangle things out, just make it nice and big here. Actually, let's darken it just a tad bit. Let's align it to the left and to the top. Okay. And now you notice it's just covering things up because it's layered as the top. So if you look here, this is again your layers. Oh, let's keep things clean. Okay, so let me just first show you how to reorder. You can reorder by either bringing it to the front or bringing it to the back, or you just hit your left or right brackets and you just bring it to the back. That's all. Let's darken this up just a tad bit. Yeah. All right. Now what we're going to do is let's rename things. So this is just background / hero. Keep everything nice and clean. Get this to the same dimensions as the whole background. So we're going to go to our panels now, select the object, width 1680 by 1024. Okay. Now what we're going to do is start naming things properly. So we have Tesla, we have our logo, we now have frame, and this is promo, and we'll keep that as backing, promo, background. And then from here, we select the menu and we'll call this main menu. Everything's all nicely named. So now what's next? We have the background. Okay, so when it comes to backgrounds, the best way to represent this is just by simple shapes, especially when it's a hero image or just some sort of image. Most of the times when you're working with an agency or you're working with a company, they already have assets like filler content. What I have is like actual style kits. Oftentimes I keep reusing them over and over again from other designs and other wireframes I've done in the past. And that really helps with your speed and with your efficiency, because eventually you just start making the same things over and over again. So there's no point in reinventing the wheel and recreating things. You just reuse objects. So they always say even developers, the smart developers, the ones that are master copy and pasters. So we're doing the same thing here, but with the design side of things. We're always just reusing what we've already done in the past. But in this case, for the purpose of this tutorial, we're just going to recreate basically a image placeholder. Just go under your shapes. We're going to do a square. Just hold down the shift. If you don't hold down shift, you can conform it to anything you want. If you hold down shift, what it'll do is it'll make sure that both the horizontal and the vertical stay nice and even. And because, remember, we have the horizontal lines, everything snaps perfectly into multiples of 8. So this is the cool part about this whole grid system that I've showed you. So let's change this to more like just an off-white. Then what we're going to do here is we're going to do another object, which is a triangle. Same thing, a little bit different. And then we're going to do a circle. All right. And then this will be pure white. And all you just do is, honestly, you just do something like this. There's nothing fancy about this. All you're just doing is representing that there's an actual image here. It's just a placeholder. That's all you're just doing. Just center it all out. Just do you can frame this as well too. So you can do it as a frame and it just turns it into a single object. And what you do from here is you can just even things out. Make sure everything's all multiple of 8. Everything's all right on pixel. Let's just put this right on the grid here. It's on the grid here. Perfect. So what it does is make sure that it's also on grid so we can just center things out. Now that's just a placeholder for the car. So if you select the image and select the background, group that together, right? So let's select the background. Let's select the actual frame of the placeholder image. And now we're going to change that into a group. Now, when you change it to group, it actually puts it to the top. So select the actual object and just bring it to the back by using the left bracket. So let's do now the H1. So H1, actually, let's change the opacity on this. So it's not 50%. That's good. Perfect. Okay, so let's change the colors as well to white. So the fills are black. Let's change this to white. Change this as well to white. Here, look at that. Perfect. Hey, that's good. It's a good representation. All right, so that's good. We are on our way to almost being complete on this landing page for Tesla's wireframe. Let's finish the navigation at the top. Again, it's all high level, and we're going to try to keep things as simplified as possible. Focus on just the basic shapes of the actual buttons themselves. So in this case, they are just circular buttons. We will make these circles probably like 24 by 24 in terms of pixel size. So go under your tools, go ahead and hit the drop down and select Eclipse. Come over to the main canvas. Let's do 24 by 24. Just simplify things. Let's just go ahead and copy the Tesla logo since it's text, turn it into a question mark, double click the edge, and it'll make sure that it snaps. Let's just change this to black since we changed it already before in the past. Center it out. Now we're going to change the order by hitting the right bracket, brings it to the top, and that's pretty much it. It's 4 on each side, right? And it's nice and center. Turn off the grids, and it's a good representation. You could even go a little bit further. Go ahead and we can just change the fill to 0, and then we add a stroke instead, and just make the stroke white. Try and get as close as possible as representation, and also change the icon to white as well. Easy enough, right? That's close enough to it. We can just change this to, instead of bold, we can change that to regular. We can even change the font size to 16. That's all we need to do. So go ahead and select it. And if you want, you can change it to a group or just change it to a frame. I tend to just make the habit of changing things to frames. I really like the clipping feature. So that's why I tend to gravitate towards using frames as well. So now we are going to also duplicate. So what we're going to do is select the object. We're going to hold down Option, slide to the right, and just duplicates it right on the spot. All right. We might as well just start building these out. They're pretty straightforward icons. So we have the world, and it looks like we have a profile. I'll show you guys how to do this really quickly. So we'll get it as close to accurate as possible. Let's just ungroup it, and it'll break everything apart. Let's just go ahead and delete. Let's bring up a grid, and let's do a line under your toolkit. Go ahead and select your shape, change it to line, draw a line out. If you hold Shift, it'll keep things straight and also snap to 45-degree angles. If you don't hold down Shift, it just goes by increments of 1. So hold down Shift, and it'll keep it nice and straight. Let's change it to 2. So it's very similar in stroke thickness. Change the color to white. And just bring it from edge to edge. Now we're going to do a bend. There's a few ways of doing that, but I'll show you the easy way. So on your toolkit panel, you just select pen, pick a point. That's why it's so nice to be on grids. So let's just pick right around here and then do the exact same thing as well too. And then what you're going to do is just click on that last click, you hold, and then you drag. You can even just eyeball it out or use the grid to just help guide yourself, and you can make a nice clean curve. So that's all you have to do. So now go ahead and select it, change it to white, change the weight to 2. If you look here, the edge is sharp. You can change it so then the endpoints are round if you want. Okay. So we'll just shift that, make that nice and even. And there you go. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to just duplicate. What you can do now is there's 2 ways of flipping this, right? So either you just click on the object, you go right click and flip horizontally, or you can just literally just flip it. If you go to the far right side on the corners, you can go on any corner of the object, and that goes for any object at all. Your arrow, your cursor will change to a curve left and right. And so what you can just do is just hold down Shift, and then you can easily just flip it around. And then just go ahead and just put it in the position where it needs to go. Just use your guides. So example, let's just keep it nice and even. So we'll just do 8 just to keep things multiples of 8. And there you go. Ta-da! So selecting multiple objects, go ahead and click on one, hold down Shift, and now you could just go ahead and click multiple objects within there. And you can see them being selected on the left pane as well too, right? Another way of selecting them is just knowing what they are, and then select one object, and then hold Shift, and then you can just easily just select the last one, and it'll all select it all in between. And from there, you can go ahead and just either frame or group it. So let's frame it, and it's framed. let's call this guy button, and this is probably a location. All right, so that's done. Let's do the profile. Okay, so let's make things easy for ourselves. Grab the question mark, go ahead and hold down Option, drag, duplicate. And if you notice here, because everything's on multiples of 8, you're able to easily distinguish the distances between each of the objects. We'll make that adjustment using auto layers anyways. Okay, rinse and repeat, ungroup, delete the question mark. Now, since this is pretty much all circles anyways, let's just make life easier for ourselves and just go ahead and duplicate it, that circle. Now hold down Option and Shift. You can shrink it or expand it, but your orientation point is now in the middle. Let's go ahead and just keep it at 8. 8's a pretty good size. We'll just bring it down to the middle, shift it up, single nudge, and there you go. So Apple command, right? And then you'll be able to highlight the individual pieces inside. So then from there, you can click on it and you can then do the exact same trick of just holding down Option, dragging out, and then now it's out of there. And if you notice, it'll also confirm it on your layers pane that it's outside of that frame where you copied it from. It's completely independent. So let's go ahead and change the orientation from vertical to horizontal by holding down Shift and then dragging. And let's bring it across and let's put it in a good spot for now where we want it to be. And because we're using grids, it's easy enough to just grab the edges, just pretty much just eyeball where you want things to go. So look at that. Nice and even, nice and even. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. And that's your profile. Yeah, that's good. All right. And that's it. That's the easiest way to make those icons. So go ahead and let's group things up. Let's call this button profile and just name things out as you go. If you go to the auto layout panel, we're able to move things into multiples of 8. It keeps everything nice and tight. Everything's all pixel perfect. Let's go ahead and bring this to the far right. Go to your alignment and do a far right. And from there, you can just go right to the edge. This is why I also put those guidelines on here, because when you turn off your grid system, you're still able to see your 1440 edge. Because we want to communicate to our developer that this is going to be responsive, and we want the logo to stretch to the left, and we want the secondary navigation to also do the same thing, we want to show that those objects are beyond the 1440. Bring it over the actual 1440. And that tells my developer that I want this to be responsive. From the edge, you can make it 80. Then there's no mistake that you want that to happen. We've already insinuated that with our background image. And again, to reinforce that communication to your developer, I'm going to show you guys that process in making the design notes in the next video when we actually go to prototype the wireframe. Okay, so let's do the title. Go ahead and hit T for text. We're going to type in Model Y. Let's change that to 0 because we don't want spaces between. Let's change that to bold. We'll go change that to white, and we can change the sizing. Let's do 80. Let's just make it center, and this right now it's at 56. So that's that, and it keeps your design super clean. So now we're going to do the last part of this whole tutorial, and that's finishing up the big CTAs. Let's go ahead and type in order now. Oh, that's huge. Let's change this to 14. Okay, do an auto layer. We are going to change the fill to black, or actually like dark gray, with the text being white. And this is, let's change the padding from the top and the bottom. Let's change that so it's a little bit bigger, right? So 8, 16, and then we can move this, make it bigger to being a lot more wider, make it 96. We have rounded corners. So let's keep that consistent with what we've done here. I think we've had that at 3. So let's change that also radius to 3. So now we have nice round edges. Yeah, it looks good. And let's just change the color to exactly what sample. this is a nice part. The eyedropper works really great, especially since we are using the Tesla site as a practice model for our wireframes. All right, we've done that. Okay, so let's go ahead and center that out. So now it's 40 from the basement to the attic, and then from here it's from the basement to the attic as well too, is at 40. So it's nice and even all the way across. Okay, now that we've done this, we've made this dynamic button. I'm going to teach you something that, again, the earlier you understand this, the better off you're going to be, just like with auto layers. And this is going to be a quick crash course on components. So there's a little more advanced, but I think that it's very important for you to understand the earlier the better. So then it helps you with your actual workflow. So now that you've created this beautiful Order Now button that is an auto layer, we're going to now duplicate it. So let's bring it to the top here. And we are then, it's still considered auto layer. We can then right click, turn it into a component. You can tell that it's a component because it's purple. But the difference is with this component, it's considered a parent component. You can tell by the dots, there's going to be 4 diamonds to represent that it's a parent. If you were to duplicate, this is now considered a child, and that's represented by a single diamond versus 4 diamonds. The difference with this is anytime you make a change on the parent, so let's say button A, it also cascades through the children. You could still make individual changes to the children. So example, we can change this to white and change the text to black, and it still changes, right? But fundamentally, especially when it comes to the sizing and stuff inside, you can still make the change and it'll cascade throughout everything. So that is how a component works at its basic form. So I'm going to take this a little bit further with you guys, and I'm going to show you how to take this component and turn it into an actual style asset. So let's go ahead and delete this. Now we can go ahead and keep this button. So it says button main and then button A, correct? So now what we're going to do is select it. We're selecting the parent. We got rid of the child. So just so that we're clear on that. And you're going to select the parent, and on the top right hand corner, you're going to see add variant. So go ahead and click add variant, and there you go. It'll say variant 2, right? The parent itself is still button main, but now it's created a variant of itself within the actual parent. You can see that on the design panel where it says variant 2. We're going to change that so it says button A. Instead of saying default, we're now going to have it say button A. There you go. So now we've set the actual parameters of this button style, this component style. Okay. We can then go ahead and, did I change this new button? Okay, button B. There we go. Button B, button A. Okay. Button B, button A, button B. So they're 2 separate components within the parent component. So it's a style. Well, that's what you've basically created. And now you can go ahead and change button B to the new style that you want. So let's change the background to white, and we'll change the text to black. All right, so that's it. You've created a component style. So let me tell you the benefits of this then, okay? So now that you've created this, you no longer need to have the auto layer button on here. The reason why we created it is because we're assuming that this button style is going to get used multiple times throughout the actual site. And we want to make it as efficient for us as possible when we're wireframing. So you can go ahead and delete this auto layer button. Now, if you go to the left-hand panel, to the right of file, you're going to see a tab called assets. Go ahead and click on it. And I've already populated this, but if it'll usually just show nothing on here. But if you type in under the search button, because we called it button main, it's going to show button main, and it's indicating that there's 2 variants inside here. So go ahead and click on it. And now you can select button A or button B. So let's go ahead and select button A, insert instance. So go ahead and cut it out, select your canvas and paste it inside. And because we do everything in multiples of 8, right now it's at 26 pixel. We want it to be at 40. That's how easy it is. Because we do everything in multiples of 8, and there's no more guesswork. We've pretty much automated things as much as we can. So go ahead and center align. And now we can go ahead and duplicate our button just the way we've done in the past. Let's do 24 pixel because that's a multiple of 8. Now go ahead and select it, and you look to the right, you'll see on the panel under property, you can now select button A and button B. You can now select it and it'll switch it to button B. Pretty cool, huh? So that really makes life super, super easy for you, okay? Let's go ahead and, ooh, look at that. We have a off pixel. Why is that? Ah, there you go. Oh, little rascal. This is why it's so powerful to learn auto layers and components and turning your components into a component style. And it becomes an asset at that point. You can then reuse it over and over again. And it's fantastic for speeding up your workflow when you're doing wireframes. You can even go ahead and turn that into a auto layer as well too. And because we've turned that into an auto layer, we can actually increase the distance in between automatically, right? Everything's all dynamically done as well. All right, guys, I think we are in good shape. Look at that. Let's do one last clean look here. So again, auto layers are pretty cool. Check this out. We're going to select the Tesla logo. We're going to select the main navigation, and we're going to select the sub icon navigation. And then we're going to turn that into auto layers as well. So now that's auto layers. That's all centered out, right? Check this out. Because those are objects on their own, we can actually move things over, reorder things, and everything stays where it needs to go. See? So powerful. Auto layers. You could just reorder things so much easier, and everything stays nice and clean. Double check. Everything is all looking good. Everything's all multiples of 8. And I call this a balance pass. So when you're done doing your wireframe or even your high fidelity mockup, you're going to then do inspections of all your objects, making sure everything is a multiple of 8 and that your distances are where they need to be. No half pixels. And this is what I call balance pass. All right. So make sure everything's looking good. So like they say, measure twice, cut once. Okay, so let's turn off the UI. We have everything looking fantastic. We have our practice mockup using the Tesla website landing page. All right, guys. Okay, so we'll leave it at that. I think we're in really good shape with what we've accomplished with this wireframe landing page. And in our next video, we're going to dive a lot deeper into components, component assets, as well as auto layers. And we'll bring everything to life as well too with this. So I'm super excited to get you guys going on this. And again, the more practice that we're going to do, we're going to continue to blow out the Tesla website landing page, and we'll pick other elements as well to wireframe things out. But we'll again continue to practice, and you'll get more familiar with your tools. I'll see you guys in a little bit, and we'll call it done for now. All right. All right, guys. So hope you found this session super helpful and got a better understanding of how to create your wireframes using Figma. So learning how to structure your design, guys, is honestly such an important part of the whole entire process. And honestly, with practice, I promise you, it's going to start to feel more and more natural. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. So feel free to drop any comments, questions, or even your own tips down below in the comments. And like I mentioned earlier, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning of our series, guys. And then we'll start bringing the whole thing home and taking our wireframe and bringing it all to life by diving into prototyping. And if you enjoyed this video and found it super valuable, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button to stay up to date. It really honestly helps get these videos out to more aspiring designers like yourselves. And if you want to be the first to know when the next tutorial drops, make sure to turn on the notification bell. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys watching. I truly appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next one.